Garry, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I realize we are some of the only people in kind of tech that are from Winnipeg.
Oh, right
originally.
on. Yeah, I was named after Fort Garry with 2 R's. My son's name is Garrison, which is kind of funny because then it's
kind of the same thing.
Yeah, anyway.
Nice. Then how did you end up in San Francisco from Winnipeg?
My dad moved to sort of work in the satellite boom back in the 80s. And so he moved to Southern California and we moved around a lot. But yeah, I mean, basically California and tech, drew our family and, it put food on the table. And then it sort of brought me into tech.
And then you stayed, obviously, in San Francisco. What was kind of that journey like?
Yeah, we ended up moving to Fremont, which was, it's in the East Bay. And, I took Bart in to take my first computer science classes at UC Berkeley. I took Bart into 16th and Mission down the street right here. And I got my first coding job that way. This was all Web 1.0. I worked at a design firm that created the first Apple e-commerce store for Steve Jobs called Adjacency.
Okay.
And so, I mean, tech gave me everything. And I'm so lucky to just be able to participate in this.
Yeah. And then today, so everyone probably is familiar with you. You're leading YC. Really quick, for people who don't know what YC is, or maybe people who do, how do you describe it today when someone asks you, what is YC?
I mean, it's an accelerator, incubator. People apply online, so you don't have to know anyone. And we accept about 1% of the people who apply. But when you get in, you get $500,000 in exchange for, about 7-ish% of the company. But what's more important than the money is actually getting a YC partner like me. I'm one of 15 people who goes out there and selects companies.
15.
We pick you out of the database. We read your application. We watch your video. We pick specific teams to meet us we meet for 10 minutes. And we have to decide, yes or no on $500,000 within 10 minutes. It almost sounds like Shark Tank, but actually Shark Tank has, I think, $0 billion companies, whereas we're going on more than 100 at this point, 20 years in. Really? Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So YC is, sort of started as this experiment. Paul Graham and Jessica Livingston started it really just as an experiment. Like, how do we give small amounts of money to people, literally like almost summer internship style? Like when I did YC, we only got $13,000 or so. Oh, wow. So,
that's like $500K now. Get from an internship. Yeah.
That's right. But that's all you needed. And, that very first YC batch had Reddit with Steve Huffman and Alexis Ohanian. That first batch had Sam Altman, who created Looped, which got funded by Sequoia. Another company sold to Amazon, I believe. So, that very first batch turned out to be a success. And they just decided, let's keep doing it.
Was Twitch in the first batch or early?
Yeah, the founders of Twitch started Kiko, which they sold that startup on eBay.
What?
Yeah, I think they made
listed it and
they listed it on eBay and bought it. And then the funny thing is when they started working on Twitch, it started as Justin TV, and they got Kyle Voigt's attention. He was a undergrad at MIT, and the other Justin and Emmett and Michael and the other sort of co-founders of Twitch, they were from Yale, but they had sold a company on eBay. And so my favorite story, it's not my story, it's Kyle's story that he found out about Justin TV because in that very first YC batch, that team had sold a startup on eBay. And that was way, way more about startups than Kyle felt like he knew. And then of course, Kyle went on to create, many multi-billion-dollar companies now in Cruise. And he's, on his journey in robotics now with Botco, which is, I mean, I wish I could say anything about Botco. Like, you have to see it. It's insane.
Is it humanoid or it's in the home?
I'm under NDA, but
okay.
It is truly one of the most remarkable things I've seen in startups in maybe ever.
So there is some information out there. People can look it up. I'll throw whatever I can find in the description. People can dig around. This episode is brought to you by Numeral. Numeral is the fastest, easiest way to stay compliant with U.S. sales tax and global VAT. It's easy to set up, and they automatically handle all registrations, ongoing filings, and their API provides sales tax rates wherever you need them with all the integrations you need. Numeral supports over 2,000 customers in both the US and globally, and they pride themselves on white glove, high touch customer service. Plus, they guarantee their work, and they'll cover the difference if they mess anything up. They're fresh off a fundraise, closing a $35 million Series B from Mayfield, which they're going to reinvest into building an even better product. If you want to put your sales tax on autopilot, check out Numeral at their new domain, numeral.com. That's numeral.com for the end-to-end platform for sales tax and VAT compliance. This episode is brought to you by Flex. It's the AI native private bank for business owners. I use Flex personally, and I love it because they use AI to underwrite the cash flow of your business, giving you a real credit line. The best part is 60 days of float, double the industry standard. Flex has all the features you'd expect from a modern financial platform, like unlimited cards, expense management, bill pay that syncs with your credit line, and their new consumer card, Flex Elite. Flex Elite is a brand new ramp-like experience for your personal life. A credit card with points, premium perks, concierge services, personal banking, cards and expense management for your family, net worth tracking across public and private assets, and a whole lot more fully integrated with your business spend. One card for your businesses, one card for your personal life, one card for everything. To skip the waitlist, head to flex.one and use my code Turner to get an additional 100,000 points worth $1,000 after spending your first $10,000 with Flex Elite. That's flex.one and code Turner for $1,000 on your first $10,000 of spend. Thank you, Flex. And now let's jump in. And so this was all in Boston, that first batch, right?
Oh, yeah. That's right. And I was the last batch. I did YC in 2008. So we were the last batch in Cambridge. But
so then why move to San Francisco? Like, how did this happen?
This was before Paul and Jessica had kids. And so they really loved to spend, basically summers in Mountain View because of the California weather, and winter in Massachusetts is pretty brutal.
Yeah.
But they liked summers in Cambridge. And so we did the last summer batch in 2008. And then it's funny because it's coming full circle. We just added our first partner who's actually based in Cambridge, Ankit Gupta. So he sold a startup. It was a great company. He sold it to Ginkgo Bioworks. And then he's based basically right next to MIT. And so we're sort of thinking about opening an office in Cambridge. And, given all of what we're seeing out there around California being more and more sort of hostile to tech, we're realizing, I'm all in on San Francisco, I'm all in on California, and we're going to fight for it. But from an institutional standpoint, they're gonna kill the golden goose here, and we got to think about where a founder is going to be.
Yeah. Okay. So that it begs an interesting question. If somebody's maybe out of the loop, they don't know what you're talking about, what's going on in San Francisco specifically, or in California?
Yeah, in California broadly, the SEIU, UHW, which is a particular union for healthcare workers, just put on the ballot, or they're trying to get on the ballot, what they call the billionaire tax. I call it the asset seizure tax. Basically, it's a one-time tax of 5% if your net worth is above $1 billion. So that sounds kind of reasonable, but if you read the fine print, it's tailored designed to seize the assets of startup founders. So
how can that be true?
I mean, Larry and Sergey both left the state because of it, in the, off chance. I mean, I think it's, a real double digit mid, 40, 50% chance that this actually gets passed in California. So I don't think it's something, I think it's something we have to take seriously. It's not this fringe thing.
Yeah.
And the way it's written, it actually doesn't take your ownership. Larry and Sergey have about 3% each of Alphabet. They actually take your voting percentage as your ownership percentage.
And they still have control, don't they? Like voting control?
Yeah. So, they would get taxed 5% on 60% of the value of Alphabet.
Which is literally their entire stake.
It would be half of their net worth.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's very strange because it's turned into this war. Like the drafters of it claim that it would not do this. And, they have sort of all of these sophist arguments around how, this won't apply. But
Why don't they just change it? Like, that seems obvious. Like, if you look at the rules, based on it's written, it will apply this way. Just change how you're writing it.
Well, that's one of the artifacts of the proposition system. This isn't going through legislation. It's not going through the Assembly or the Senate. This is not something that Gavin Newsom can veto. It's actually going to a direct proposition on the ballot, probably for November.
So if it gets voted and passed, it just gets like bolted onto the California Constitution.
Yep, that's how it works. I mean, this is how we got Prop 13. A lot of things are broken about California, but this is one of those. SEIU, UHW might change it, but I think in the background, I think people who care about basically the state and, who want tech to thrive in the state, like we actually have to get organized. And, that's what I'm going to keep working on that.
So I think what seems to be happening is instead of paying the tax, people just leave.
Yep.
Like, is that an actual thing that you think could happen?
That's happening right now. I think about $1 trillion in personal net worth has left the state, which is about half of the billionaires in California. And the result,
you're getting half the effect you thought you were getting when you put this bill into place.
Yeah. And, when you look at taxes, 76% of taxes are paid by the top 10%. I'm not saying that that's wrong, but what do you do when sort of more than $1 trillion of net worth leaves the state? It means that middle-class people, everyone else has to pay a lot more. And so, it's hilarious. Wall Street Journal had a quote from a wealth manager who's a mere millionaire, and which is crazy to me. And he says, well, I don't care. It doesn't affect me. But the reality is I'm also not a billionaire. The thing is, everyone will end up paying taxes, or services that are really important will get cut. And so, when you have bad policy, we just have to work against it. We've got to vote the right way. And so, I don't know. I mean, coming up in tech, I never paid attention to this stuff. And then now I'm starting to realize, no, we have to pay attention. We're sitting here in San Francisco right now. I think we're in the middle of a really great resurgence, but the job is not done. The same forces, similar sets of people who put out this, sort of asset seizure tax, they are also trying to 10x the gross receipts tax here in San Francisco.
And that is where you don't necessarily pay taxes on revenue or income. It's based on transaction volume of your service or something.
That's right.
Like that?
Yeah. And so this is exactly the tax that actually drove both Stripe and Square, a number of fintechs out of San Francisco. And, we have something like a 30 or 40% vacancy rate. On the ride over here, looking out the window, it's you will see a ton of empty space. And it's just, it's been sitting empty for years. How are we actually going to fix that if nobody wants to, the second you get product market fit, are you going to stay in San Francisco? Are you going to pay literally 1,000x the tax that you would in Mountain View or Sunnyvale? Most smart people would probably find a way to say, you know what, I don't have to be here. And so, and these things matter, right? San Francisco matters a lot. The reason why I'm fighting for it is that I want startups to continue to be in San Francisco and the Bay Area. If they stay, that's the one thing that you can choose about your startup that can change your outcome so drastically. It's 2.5 times more likely if people choose to stay in the Bay Area that their company ends up being worth $1 billion. New York is about 2x, and everywhere else in the country is basically, it's, that's the baseline, right?
So just moving to New York or San Francisco increases your chances, all else equal, by 2 and 2.5x.
Yeah. And, I think there are infinity types of effects here. You're around people who you have access to capital. That's number one.
Yep.
You're around people who are very, very ambitious. And so, your ambition rises when all your friends' ambition is really, really high.
Yeah.
You get access to way smarter people who have actually done the things that you need to do. So, I think the thing that scares me is that if the state, if the city, if the policies don't support tech, it's not merely going to move, it's actually going to hurt America. It's going to hurt our ability to actually stay on the forefront of things. And, people sort of scoff at that, but, San Francisco is where we made the self-driving car, right? This is where Uber came up. This is where Airbnb started. This is where GPT-1 was formulated by Alec Radford, right? Like this is the dawn of the AI revolution. Like Anthropic and OpenAI started in the Mission District. And, the third crazy thing that's happening that, blew my mind, like it was going to pass until, we harnessed people on the internet in December. The sitting supervisor in San Francisco for the Mission District, where they came up with self-driving cars and large language models, wanted to ban AI labs, ban laboratories and research and development entirely in her district. She would have made it so that you had to go to a special council, probably headed by her and her cronies, to even be allowed to open an R&D lab, even for cancer research. So, to me, that's a ban on R&D in the place where some of the best work in the world happened right here in our city. Like, how did we get here?
Yeah, well, even if you go back like semiconductors, think of like Intel being basically birthed and grown in the Bay Area, the internet, all these different companies, different software companies, Instacart, how they probably get their groceries delivered, DoorDash, I'm sure they've stayed at Airbnb, they've used Google products, the iPhone, Apple was birthed and born here in the Bay Area. And if none of those exist, you don't have a way to reach your constituents as a politician. You don't have a way to go on vacation. You don't have a way to access the internet. Like all that goes away.
A lot of the internet was built right here. I mean, a lot of it right here in California. So, I think people don't understand, like it's the golden goose, but, we should enjoy the eggs. We shouldn't eat the goose.
Fair. So if I want to get involved in local politics, whether it's San Francisco or anywhere, what would you recommend doing?
Oh, follow me on X. And, I guess what I'm trying to do is do a lot more research, media. I mean, this idea, this, understanding of the actual proposition, I didn't necessarily want to break it on my X. I sent it to a number of reporters and it just astonished me. Like people wouldn't publish it. They didn't think it was noteworthy.
I mean, based on what you just described, I'm like, holy shit, that's a pretty big deal.
I mean, this is where I sort of wonder, like, it doesn't feel like the media environment is designed to support this idea that tech should exist at all. Like, I think that it's so unpopular with certain sets of people in society that tech could be a positive force, that anything that might even resemble an argument to, like, not do an asset seizure, for instance. The most mainstream business publications are starting to refuse to publish that, which is just surprising. Like, how do we get here, But on the other hand, on the bright side, you do this all day and I'm trying to do this all day. Like, we get to go direct, right? Like, what we're doing right now is not some sort of...
I'm not gatekeeping this.
Yeah.
Like, whatever you're saying, we're putting it on the internet.
We're just putting it out there.
Right.
This is like what I've learned. And this, I think that's the counterbalance, I guess. I mean, we used to have to go through a media and there was like a mediation of like how reality works. Whereas now we can just go direct. And, I'm not going to get everything right all the time. And I own up to that. I try to, be as truthful as I possibly can be because, I have to wake up and look at myself in the mirror and say like, am I doing the right thing?
Yeah.
And so maybe that's our covenant as creators on the internet now. It's like, well, I'm not going to get it right all the time, but at least like my guarantee to the people who follow me is like, I'm trying to do it, man. Like I have a particular worldview. I'm not without bias, but it's a bias that's informed by, I meet with founders all day. I meet with tech people all day and I'm meeting legislators. I'm meeting policy people and this is what I'm seeing.
Yeah. Plus, if you just suddenly start saying things that aren't true or aren't well researched and informed, and people are just like, oh, Garry doesn't know what he's talking about. Like, I'm not going to pay attention to him anymore.
Yeah.
You kind of lose your credibility if you're not continuing to fulfill that promise kind of to your audience or to the people that trust you.
Yeah.
So on the other side, there could be audience capture.
Yeah.
Like you might be totally biased of like only communicating things that are favorable to tech in a way. So I guess there's that argument too. which, I mean, then it's good. It's good to have the counterbalance, I guess, of all these different people with different opinions and
yeah,
biases.
I'm not the only person that people should follow. And I would never tell people like use me as the only source of information. That would be bad. So
and
I just think of that meme, hey,
the
we're the media.
Captain
We're the
Phillips.
media now.
Yeah, we're the media now. You mentioned something kind of interesting with sort of these like eras of YC. You might have actually said this before we started recording, but you said there's kind of been these different eras of YC. And so maybe the first era was, maybe it was Boston. Maybe it was still the first era when Jessica and Paul moved to San Francisco. What was kind of like the second act or second era of YC?
I mean, basically it was Paul and Jessica and Trevor Blackwell and Robert Morris in Cambridge initially. And then they started coming to the Bay Area. And then actually Harj Tagger, who's the managing partner with me at YC now, was one of the first outside partners. He was a YC alum. He actually co-founded a company with Patrick Collison that went through YC the first time called Octomatic. Okay. And I got to work with him, Paul Buchheit, who created Gmail, Jeff Ralston, who created Yahoo Mail. We were sort of like a set of people starting in 2011 who became partners. And so
this was kind of like the second era.
Yep. So PG and Jessica were, still directly involved. And it was like way more than a full-time job, I would say. And they had very young children as well.
Was it like we're going to scale YC? We're going to try to help more founders. We're going to put more capital to work. We're going to try to make a bigger impact on the world.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that first era was fascinating to see because I saw here was this place where I was, a software engineer. I was working at Palantir. I designed the logo at Palantir, actually, employee number 10. And then we were trying to hire away some YC alums who had just gone through the program.
So that's how you first came across
That's
YC?
how I found out about YC.
Oh, interesting.
So, Palantir, we were only 10 people and we were just really into hiring the smartest engineers. And so it's kind of funny because, 2006, 2007, that was right when YC started.
Okay.
And so it wasn't until maybe 2011 or so, that was when Dropbox had become $1 billion startup. But a lot of people said, oh, one, you're lucky. And then, in 2010, 2011, that was when Airbnb became $1 billion company. And then one, you're lucky, two, you're good. Suddenly everyone in the Valley realized YC was actually really a place to pay attention to.
So Airbnb put YC on the map, just in the sense of, holy shit, they've done this twice.
Yeah.
There must be something there.
Yeah. And then that's when YC sort of went from giving people, $12,000, $15,000 to, $120,000, $175,000. And yeah, it was just interesting to see the difference, right? Like I knew back in 2007, 2008, like this was where really smart engineers wanted to go start their company. It was like, I wanted to be like Steve Huffman. I wanted to be like Drew Houston. I wanted to be like James Lindenbaum, who created Heroku, which we used. And, really one of the best cloud software startups of that era. And so it was already in the minds of like the creators and the founders themselves that like, here's the super technical guild of all the smartest people making the things that we want to make. And then
other people started paying attention.
Yeah, it took like 3 or 4 years for the investors to catch up, but they caught up by 2011.
That's kind of classic though. Like the investors always catch up later when the proof point's there.
Which makes sense.
Yeah. And then I think there's like a famous, I actually might have tweeted this as a joke, but you were officially a photographer at YC at one point. That was like your first kind of role. You were just like volunteering, taking pictures.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we were applying to YC. I was actually trying to become a editorial hip hop photographer at the time.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, so
so this is like a portfolio work of like build your brand.
A little bit. It was like a quarter life crisis of mine where, I had rage quit my job at Palantir.
Oh, really?
And I mean, I was just younger and, I spent a lot of time on my YouTube channel sort of talking about my psychological and like sort of business journey, and I honestly, I managed to sort of reprogram myself in a way and in ways that like helped me get to where I'm at today. But I put a lot of credit to Cameron Yarbrough. He actually started a exec coaching startup called Torch and torch.io. And, he was one of the people who taught me like, oh yeah, everyone sort of goes through whatever's going on for them, right? Like you have your 10,000 hours of human training from your childhood and your teachers and like all the things that you saw. But, on the one hand, some people treat that as destiny. Well, that's what I got and that's it. And what I learned from Cameron was that these are things that you can actually control. Like you can change, you can, are you a Westworld fan?
It was the HBO show.
With the robots. And you could, freeze all motor function. And then you could go into like a debug mode.
Yeah.
That's what therapy and coaching can do. And that's something that helped me a lot. Like I, basically stopped rage quitting after being able to spot like, oh, well, this is a pattern. Like I rage quit my job working for Joe Lonsdale at Palantir. I rage quit actually my startup in 2010. And after that, I realized, oh, no, I have this cycle where I will, sort of self-abandon a little bit too much. There's, for me, like the central core thing that I had to learn about myself was that I had this sort of mode where, we might be co-founders. I disagree with you on this. But rather than just saying it, I might eat it. I just don't even say it, right? Because I want us to have a good relationship. Like I sort of mistook this idea that, you always hear the advice like, oh, you better have a really good co-founding relationship. And I mistook that for like, oh, you should never fight, which is not true at all. Great co-founders fight absolutely all the time and about everything, but mainly because they care so much and they do it in a way that like preserves the relationship. There is never a conflict or a fight that is so much more important than the relationship itself. And that could be a co-founder, that's in marriage, that's in like all, good close, friendships. Like this is sort of the repeating thing. And so I learned that actually I shouldn't self-abandon. And then my pattern would be, I would keep it to myself. I'd say like, oh, I can deal with this. Some of this is that my mental model for human beings is like there's a horse and a rider. And, I have a very strong rider. Like my prefrontal cortex and my language center can like control the horse, I guess. It's just like, you would call that like very strong will, I guess. And this is like a very subtle, weird thing where I would use that to sort of like squelch all of these other things that I knew was correct, whether it's like, oh, the homepage should say this, or actually like it should, actually the startup, we started like this, but we should pivot to that, right? Like these are all things that like you should be able to talk to your co-founder about. But it was on my end. Like I was a terrible co-founder to my co-founder at Posterous back in 2008. That was my YC startup. And so, yeah, these are things that you can control and you can change. And, for me, I would run into a point where like I had chosen to self-abandon enough that, to use the horse and rider analogy, the horse would just say like, F this. Like I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. Like it became, a somatic actually. And this happened a few times and it took like quite a bit of therapy and coaching to realize, oh yeah, this is a cycle. This is something that happens and I can actually do something about it. Like I can be aware of it. I can, so today in my work with my therapist and my coach, like often I'm trying to think through like, okay, freeze all motor function. What's going on here? Like, and then if I'm very lucky or very, very astute, and usually with the help of others, I'm not able to do this myself, I can place an if statement in there. And it's like, when my face gets hot, I'm going to stop. And, I might have like a default reaction, like shutting it down, or like, I said self-abandoning, like the part that would happen would be I bottled it up so much, then I'd blow up. I went into a one-on-one with one of my first designers I'd ever hired, and I just blew up at him. And he was like, Garry, I've never been more disrespected in my entire life. Like, how did this happen? Like, where's this coming from? And
it's probably just years of you just not voicing the thing. And then you hit a tipping point and here's 18 things that I'm laying on you.
Exactly.
All at once.
And that's definitely not healthy. And so the cool thing though is like, I think it happens all the time. I think that it's actually one of the more fundamental things that I really want founders to understand because like, I just gave my map and it took me many, many years to like sort of map that out, to freeze all motor functions like regularly every single week and figure out like what was going on. Everyone else has like clearly other things like, it's my thing is not universal. Like mine's specific to me. Everyone has sort of their own set of things. But like it or not, like, do you know how people talk about startups and, startups themselves take on the personality of their founders?
Yeah, I've heard that.
And so this is like a direct outgrowth of that. Like if people don't handle these things and get a chance to, figure this stuff out, like it just shows up in your org in ways that are, it'll just happen someplace and you'll be like, well, where did that come from? And then if you really pull on the thread, it's like, oh, because that's me. Like that's how I, who you hire, who you fire, like how you deal with almost any conflict. Like that is actually how the organization deals with conflict. So on the one hand, like most people look at this, internal work. It's sort of like, oh, it's like some West Coast, like do some ayahuasca and like talk about our feelings type bullshit that doesn't matter. And I'm like, no. Like, maybe psychedelics are not for everyone. Like be very careful about that. That's my take. And on the flip side, like, no. Like how you do anything, how you do anything is how you do everything. Right. And so I certainly recognize this like repeating pattern in myself. And I mean, I think we see it play out across thousands of companies, right? And we can't be there all the time. Like, being a YC partner for a company, like we try to be there, but we also see these sort of repeating things. And, we have to like take control of ourselves. Like, if you can be a better person, like actually you'll show up better, you'll hire better people, you'll manage better, like everyone will be more functional, like not afraid, more truthful, more focused on the outcome. And then that will produce a better product and actually winning in the marketplace. So it's like, it's not this, in the sky, like, let's talk about our feelings thing. It's actually like,
it's
pretty fundamental to whether or not a startup works or not.
Well, so speaking of that question, I feel like YC has published data before on these are the most common reasons that a startup fails. I think number one is you run out of money, quote unquote. And then number two is kind of co-founder disagreement or conflict. Is that
maybe
true?
This is a funny aspect of YC. YC companies tend not to die because they ran out of money because they have some money. Usually they shut down because they get tired. They get demoralized. I mean, it's sort of real. It's honestly like often co-founder issues. And so, a great co-founder conflict, you might not agree on everything, but you're able to get to some sort of outcome. And then the outcome and decision like leads to success. And then, good things beget good things, right?
So even if you have disagreements, you might disagree on everything at first, but you're able to come to a common understanding or decision and just do it and just move past it. And maybe not move past it in the bad sense of like burying it, but like talking about it and figuring out like, this is actually what it means. This is what the decision means to us or why we should do it.
Absolutely. And then the nuance is like, honestly, I like the analogy of an idea maze. You're at the beginning, you're actually at a maze, right? And how do you're trying to get to product market fit. You're getting to it. You want to create something that people want, make something people want is the t-shirt that we give everyone.
Oh, you actually get a t-shirt?
You literally get the, like, that's nice. If you had to sum YC up in one sentence, one mantra, it's make something people want. Like you can just think on that, like, say, we should just make people say, make something people want, like as a Hail Mary or something. It's like, here, we give you absolution. Just say, make something people want 1,000 times and meditate on it and your startup will succeed. So,
but then you start thinking of like, make something people want. Like, what do people actually want?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like some people, you just forget. Like when I started this podcast, it was like, what would I want to hear in a podcast? Like, it's not just, what's the checklist of what you should do when you make a podcast? It was more of like, what would it be fun to talk to Garry about? Like, what would I actually want to hear if I had him come on?
Awesome.
So you kind of just, I think about that with everything. It's like make something people want, I guess.
Yeah, you start with the verb like make, right? You got to make something. And then what's funny is make something is too short because it's missing like the interaction with other people, you know?
Oh, yeah. So then I guess we're continuing the phases of YC. So you joined at some point. It was like after you went
2011
through this journey of, so you had rage quit and then you were suddenly like...
Yeah, I rage quit my startup and then Harj said, well, you're a great designer. And, this is sort of the era of consumer startups still. So this is the moment when people said like, oh, well, you need a designer with your co-founding team. And so I actually came on having no intention of ever becoming an investor, ever becoming a GP or starting a VC fund.
Oh, really?
I was just like, I'm really burnt out and I need to recuperate. And Harj and PG and Jessica said, why don't you just come and help a bunch of YC companies design their homepages? And then I just did so many office hours that, my pet theory is like, maybe they saw how much work I was doing and they were promoting other people who were great into investing partner. And they said, well, you're doing so much work. Like we kind of need to promote you too. So I'm like, I snuck right in there.
So unclear if you're actually good, but you were working hard.
This was my imposter syndrome at work, but it worked out. I mean, I learned a lot. What was really cool about it, I really loved that moment because, I was the same age and like I was, a practitioner right at that moment. It's very interesting to be, 12 years, 13, 14 years into like the other side of that. Like, I think this is probably the life of many an investor. Like you start out as, a true peer to a lot of the people you're backing. And it's very funny. But on the other hand, like, I feel like I can be right back there. This whole weekend, I was just sitting there in Claude Code, like making a new website and, doing new interaction design. I'm like, oh my God, I'm back.
Back in the game.
That's right.
Like the investor that like truly rolls up their sleeves and they're like, they're in the trenches there. They're trying out all the new tools.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then there was a period you kind of started Initialized then. You were still at YC. How did that kind of go?
Yeah. I mean, this was back when people could be a YC partner and do personal angel investing. And then Harj and Alexis and I were sort of the young partners who had not made any money yet. Palantir was still private and Posterous had sold to, or was about to sell to Twitter, but Twitter was also private. And so Jessica said, hey, you could probably be an investor by, and she introduced us to some LPs basically. And so we raised Initialized Fund 1, which is a $7 million fund. And we ended up returning more than 55x DPI on that one. So,
not too bad.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was mostly Coinbase and Instacart, but, I think that's probably the thing in an investor's sort of worldview that like you read about it, you hear about it, and then until you see it, you don't believe it. Like we funded 100 companies.
Oh.
And, if you added up the DPI on all 98 companies, it was like 1x. And then Instacart was 1x, but we couldn't take any pro rata because Sequoia did it. And then Coinbase, we took the pro rata in multiple rounds and ended up turning the fund like 53x.
Oh, wow.
So when you see the power law, it is astonishing and unbelievable, honestly.
Yeah. And then you initially, it seemed like it was going really well. So you step back from YC like on a daily basis and we're running Initialized full time.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I mean, basically, this is like the Sam Altman era. And, at that moment, I had helped raise the continuity fund, brought in the first LPs for it. And then I said, well, YC is in pretty good shape and it's got institutional backing. It's going to keep going. And then for me, it was like, it's more fun to be a pirate than to, join the Navy. But, here I am. I'm an admiral again.
So then how did that come about where you had started your own fund? It seemed like it was going really well. I think you had probably raised like your third or fourth fund. Maybe I should have looked this up again before, but like it seemed like, oh, you're set with Initialized. Why would you go back to YC? How did that happen?
Yeah, I mean, I guess this is a special thing. Like YC is not just sort of like a boot camp or it's not even just a school. It's it's a way of life. No,
Yeah.
I guess like more seriously, I mean, all of our wins, like 80, 90% of the wins were either YC or YC alumni.
Oh,
And
from
so
Initialized?
for Initialized, I mean, super big ones that we're still super psyched about. I mean, ended up being the first investor in Rippling, you know, first seed investors at demo day for Flock Safety. I mean, we have a ton of incredible companies that are all like, today worth a lot of money. And then I looked down and realized, well, this is all a part of like this larger ecosystem. And mid to end of 2022, like Sam had gone off to work on OpenAI. Jeff Ralston, who I'd worked with for many years, took over as sort of a caretaker president. And then he said, a bunch of people from that era, especially PG and Jessica, said, we really want you to come back. And Brian Chesky was a big part of that, of Airbnb. He said he was on the board and still is on the board at YC. And he said, Garry, it's time for you to come back. And
were you expecting that?
Not at all. I mean, that was like, I never thought that would happen. On the other hand, it's like a dream job to me. I mean, YC gave me my start as a founder, gave me my start as an investor. It was like, probably 50 to 80% of my friends are like all from this world. I mean, basically going from like being on the branch to like, tending the root of the tree of prosperity. Some of it was like, if it wasn't going to go the right way, I might as well retire. Like, it's one of those, only people of a certain age will understand my reference of, it's kind of like the hair club for men, like in many, many different ways. I'm, not just the president, I'm also a client. So, I both went through YC and I was also one of the investors at Demo Day. And I, managed to turn in like multiple 10x, plus, sort of legend VC funds. And so I'm like, no, I understand this ecosystem really, really well.
Yep.
And
because you'd almost been like every sort of like constituent that you serve in the ecosystem, you've been on the other end of it.
And I mean, I'm sure that most of my VC friends would like agree with this at this point, but that was like a concerted effort the last 2 or 3 years to basically realize that YC is a managed marketplace. And that's a good thing. Like basically it's a managed marketplace for all the smartest people starting the next companies. We're about 20% of all the names, all the companies worth $5 billion and up started from 2012 and later.
They participated in YC?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, and frankly, like it's a network effects biz. So it stayed about 20% for going on like, 15, 18 years, I would say. And why can't that be 30? Why can't that be 40? So, you can, mark 2026 on the calendar. And, if I'm successful in 5 or 10 years, like I'd like that to be 30. I'd like that to be 50. Like, why not? Like this is and should be a network effects business where, it's not about the money. It's about like having a community of all these people who you can trust and they're there to support you. That's actively, I think of it as like Disney Imagineering. Like Disneyland is this incredible place. And, if you go down into the bowels of Disneyland, like you'll realize, oh, there's like an incredible amount of care and thought about like every little detail, like every part of the experience is designed. And, I really credit Brian Chesky for that. I mean, it's like sort of the original designer founder. Having him on my board is absolutely insane because it's like, mile a minute ideas about like what we need to do to create, it's no surprise at all that he created Airbnb because he is that good thinking about human experiences.
So any examples of that? Like what have you learned from Brian Chesky in terms of designing human experiences or ways to make YC a better product?
I mean, a lot of it is just focus. Like I'm sure if people haven't seen it, like they should definitely go and watch. I mean, you need to read Paul Graham's essay about founder mode. And then Brian's done a bunch of things like, actually, I like the one he did with Jessica Livingston on the Social Radars podcast about founder mode. And basically, he had to remake that company from scratch, like during COVID. And he basically realized that you have to leadership is presence, not absence. Like the classic advice that people give to startup founders who reach product market fit is like, hire the smartest people you possibly can find and give them the keys to the kingdom. And his advice like flies in the face of it. And he's like, oh, I did that. And it created a company that I did not recognize. Like my directs with there's just so many different things that he sort of realized. And then I think as founders, especially post product market fit, you just don't listen to like basically your own beating heart around what you need to do for the company. And so what he said, I'm not the founder of YC, but I feel like he gave me sort of, between him and Paul Graham and Jessica Livingston, this like incredible sense that like, no, like I'm not the founder, but like, we are going to run it, like founder mode. Like I need to take like a really, really radical ownership about what is that experience like? What's demo day like? Yeah. What is, the application process like? We brought back in-person interviews. We moved San Francisco. We got an office right here in San Francisco. We told all the founders, move to the dog patch. Like move to the center of where all the stuff is being built and be surrounded by all the other people who do that. When I came back, it was a remote program. We do basically, the batch is not remote at all. You cannot do YC remotely, but it wasn't really working as a remote program,
Really? So when you talk about that 20% number, like did it start to dip, or did you feel like you were losing that 20% and it wasn't going up anymore?
I mean, that's what it felt like, honestly. Right. And I mean, some of it is, we did a lot of really amazing things. Like, YouTube started becoming a really big factor for YC, but YouTube is not enough. Like, this is part of the reason why we're going to open an office in Cambridge. Like, we need to be on the ground with the world's best founders. And, frankly, some of the best ones are right there at MIT and Harvard.
But it's kind of like you're still trying to scale it. Because it sounds like before the answer to scaling the YC experience was online application and interviews and, maybe it's like a little bit more decentralized. Yeah. I think I saw a chart of like international YC companies. It was kind of going up quite a bit where you guys funded more teams around the world. But now it sounds like it's still trying to hold that like in person, what makes it special. We're creating this like network, but maybe trying to scale that, like maybe try to recreate what exists currently in the dog patch in Cambridge.
Oh yeah. I mean, the thing that keeps me up at night, some of it is like we mint 99% of people who apply to YC end up getting somewhat of a mortal ego wound by being rejected.
So I was going to ask you about that. I see a lot of like, I don't know, it's like people who are upset that they didn't get in.
I mean, it keeps me up at night because like, it's not a good thing, right? And this is something we talk about inside YC. It's like, something like a third of the batch, maybe even, depending on the batch, sometimes half of the batch will have been rejected prior to getting in. And that number's been going up. People sometimes have to, it's quite common for people to apply 2 to 4 times before they get in. So, I think we're always worried about over-rotating, like, basically being too small can be bad, being too big can be bad. We're always trying to figure out what that number is. But I think we're pretty clearly right now, like there are way more really, really capable founders who we are rejecting. And that keeps me up at night. We should not have to ask people to be rejected like time after time. I will say though, if you can survive the mortal ego wound of being rejected, once, twice, or 3 times, you're actually made to be a founder. If you cannot be rejected even once and you like mortally hate YC after being rejected once, maybe try a different profession because being a founder really does require an absolutely insane amount of resilience. And one rejection the get ready buddy, like it's going to be 1,000 more, like in every possible way.
Yeah.
And a really great founder just says, you know what, like they got this wrong, but I'm going to prove them right. I'm going to prove myself right. And, to be frank, that is what we love. Like I particularly love funding founders who, we might have gotten it wrong. There's actually an example of this in Fall Batch, actually. There's a company that they're, very active on Twitter right now. And, Diana picked them up for the winter batch. But, both Nico and I had interviewed and we should have accepted them for fall. And so, if you're watching, I'm so sorry I made a mistake. And I've said that on Twitter already. So yeah, I mean, this stuff keeps me up at night. Like I don't like to hand out, honestly, like, how many is it? Like we get about 80,000 applications. So it really is, something like 78,500, like mortal wounds,
This is per year?
Yeah.
So you accept probably like 200, 250, 300 per batch?
Oh, no, we get up. Yeah, I mean, I think we're doing about between 700 and 800 companies a year. So,
yeah, so it's about 1%.
Yeah, so it's, I mean, it's a lot of companies. Like we reject a lot of companies. And, on the one hand, like, hey, please apply again. There's that meme I try to post that's like, hey, getting rejected from YC is sort of the first step to, kind of sort of being accepted to YC.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, it's the Adventure Time meme.
So what would you recommend? If somebody's listening to this and they have or haven't applied to YC yet, like what are some of the things that maybe they're obvious, maybe they're not obvious, but like, what are you looking for when someone applies to YC?
I mean, I love builders. So just being able to see, I mean, honestly, what Claude Code can do today. What's funny is like boilerplate, like what just comes out kind of sucks. And so, one of the things I'm even realizing from the last weekend of like going deep on it is that like, you can create, like there's pretty much no excuse why people can't make beautiful, super well-made stuff. Like there's sort of, I'm sort of worried, like maybe this is, the boomer 2010 startup founder talking in me right now. But, I think that there is a craft to creating online and, sort of startup experiences for people. I mean, if you're building software anyway, like there's just something there that I think it's easier than ever to create something that is like all the way sanded down. Like the story I always think about is Steve Jobs would famously talk about how like a cabinet maker can recognize other cabinet makers as being really great at their job, not by like looking at the front. Everyone can look at the front. Like, most everyone thinks about the fit and finish of what's in the front. A great cabinet maker will finish the back. And then that's how, you can really, like game really does recognize game. And when I look at the partners that we have, like we have people who have sold their companies for, hundreds of millions of dollars that, there are people who have like, they're really great practitioners of getting to product market fit themselves. Like Tom Blomfield created Monzo, which is worth billions of dollars. It's one of the absolute top fintech companies in the world. And so, we have 15 people, all of whom I can say without a doubt, like, especially after doing funding, even 2 or 3 years of companies, like, 2 or 3 years of YC time as a partner is equivalent to like 20 years in like venture. I would say. Because think about like...
Is it the reps?
The reps are unbelievable, right? Like if you are reading personally, 1,000 to 2,000 applications every single year, you're working very directly writing, I mean, frankly, like even as a seed investor, that's pretty wild. Like writing 50 seed checks in a given year, like sometimes 75. Like,
yeah, I do about 6 to 8 a year. Not quite as much.
So if you get those reps, like, the organization learns, and actually that's sort of the reason why it works. I don't think that I can try to pull out the, $1 billion idea for founders. And, that's hit or miss. Like that just requires inspiration. Like I think that people like Paul Graham or Vinod Khosla, for instance, like par excellence, incredible. I would say that like all of the YC partners are, top 2 to 5% in the world at like being able to do that. But on top of that, because we get so many reps and we've seen so many things, Like it's actually about stopping you from blowing yourself up on like the sort of 10,000 landmines. It's like, oh, that's going to lead the co-founder to conflict. Oh, like be careful about taking money from that investor. Oh, like you got single channel concentration. There's sort of like literally 10,000 things. Like the good thing is like, because we've seen everything, like we'll never freak out. I mean, that's actually like, really good investors are like that. They're like soft advisors who never freak out. They're like, oh, this is happening. Interesting.
Like your company is probably going to die in a month if you don't make this change, but there's 3 people that have actually done this before. And exactly. Here's what they did.
Yeah. And then, you know, look, like I can tell you this, but also talk to the person where it happened. And then that's where like, you know, it takes a village to create these things. And so, yeah, if I look at like, why is it that YC can do this? Like, well, you know, whoever is in that batch is the top 1% of what's going on. And then if you put them in a room, like they just like by default create this community of like, you know, default trust. And then the partners themselves, like you get, you know, 1 out of the 15 that's like, hey, we're here for you for like the life of the company and beyond. Like we're, you know, actually there to fund the founders, you know?
Yeah. Talking a little bit more about the app, is there a common reason maybe between that like top 5% and 1%? Like because I know you guys send an email that's like, hey, you're in the top, I think it's either 5 or 10%. Is there like a common reason that maybe people don't quite get to that accepted, but they're ranked pretty highly? Like, is there something where you kind of usually get tripped up in the application? Or it's like somebody who maybe the first 2 times they didn't get in, but then the 3rd time they get in and they're really successful. Yeah. Like, are there things that you feel like they're like fringe, almost make it into YC types of things?
Oh man. I mean, the hard part is it's, you know, I couldn't tell you, like every single company is such a different, unique snowflake.
There's a lot of subjectivity probably too, where you just kind of had like a gut feeling on this one, but not this one.
Yeah. I mean, we often try to do re-interviews. So it's actually more and more common that, you know, if one partner says like, well, there's something here, you know, it's not, I can't do it. I mean, sometimes people just get full up. Like we don't want partners.
You each like pick your...
each partner picks their own cohort. And, you know, basically sometimes our eyes are bigger than our mouths and bellies, I guess. I don't know. I mean, so we try to pass it to other people who might want it. I think a lot of it is just about, it is that snap judgment in 10 minutes. And, you know, all we can really do is give you more shots to like sort of have it click for someone. Because it's a considered thing. Like YC done wrong, it sort of feels like, you know, random winning the lottery. And YC done right is like you're meeting someone and, you know, it's actually pretty high pressure for the partners because like it or not, like we're going to get text messages and emails and like, you know, we're signing up for like the long haul, like work. So it's considered, you know.
So what is, you talked a little bit about like you get into YC, there's this batch. How does it kind of go just for someone who's not familiar from the outside? And then what would you recommend to get the most out of YC?
Yeah.
Like if I just got in and I'm listening to this, I'm super excited. Maybe you tell me this when I get in, but what would you say to someone to get the most out of YC?
Yeah, I mean, we just extended it to a 13-week program. I mean, this is what I mean by like, it's, you know, Disneyland and like, we have to Imagineer this stuff, right? Like we pay attention we talk to people and it's like, how did it go? Like, what can we do better? We went to 4 batches and realized, oh yeah, actually like the batch got a little bit shorter and people need a little bit more time.
Oh, but, so you went from 2 to 4 and you shortened it when you went to 4?
Yeah. We went down to like maybe 11-ish weeks, 12-ish weeks. We realized, oh yeah, no, we need to add like 2 more weeks and get this to 13. And so, you know, the first sort of 9 to 10-ish weeks, I would say, we're just trying to find product market fit. Like, let's get in market, let's nail our messaging, let's figure out who we're building it for, and let's build it. Like, let's get, you know, a set of real customers. Sometimes it's enterprise, sometimes it's, you know, in DevTools is very funny because DevTools is actually like consumer startup, but your total addressable market is like 20 million people. So now with CodeGen, like maybe that's 200, you know, like and so yeah, AI infrastructure is growing really, really fast. And, you know, that's just ongoing, like always changing. Like I think YC is like totally insane for infra and cloud startups in that respect, because you basically look to your left, look to your right, and look like at, you know, 800 companies that were funded the prior year. And like
Yeah.
all of those people will reply to your email and like will at least give you a fair shot. Like, it's not a guarantee they're going to sign on, but man, the first like 3 to 5 customers matters a lot. And that sort of sets the tone for the whole company. And then, we actually try to keep the amount of time spent on fundraising to like maybe 2 weeks. Like basically, the funny thing about fundraising is like, I think the mistake that people make as founders is like considering that like that's the finish line. And it was like, no, that's not the finish line. That's the starting gun, guys. Like,
Yeah.
Have a party and then like actually get back to work the next day. Cause like, safes are, they're not actually debt, but you should sort of treat it like debt. Like, someone gave you $1 million, they gave you $5 million. But guess what? Like you sort of signed up to say that, hey, we're going to return a big multiple of that based on the things that we're going to do from here. Like that $1 million is going to be worth 100 million. It's going to be worth $1 billion.
And you mentioned earlier, you alluded to like things or investors you should take money from or shouldn't take money from. If I'm doing YC, I'm approaching demo day, maybe explain a little bit how demo day usually goes for someone who's, has only heard of this but never been there. And then how do you usually recommend somebody kind of picks what investors they should or shouldn't work with?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I guess the reality is people start basically towards the end. Like we want people mainly working on the startups because that's what actually matters. And then there is sort of a starting gun inside YC for going to talk to investors. So if I were an investor, I want to sort of talk to them that like probably Saturday. Like, we sort of do the send off, like you're done with fundraising prep, you're ready to talk to investors. And then usually that's Saturday. It's like, all right, off to the races. Like, let me start meeting people. And so it's pretty important. I mean, the number one thing that a startup founder can do going into YC is like make really, really valuable things and get real customers that, pay and retain. And then fundraising is easy because everyone can see it.
Yeah, because it's like you're trying to give someone like an attractive asset to invest in.
Yeah.
And that's what they're doing. They want to make money. They want to give you money. And then in 10 years, you give them back 100 or 1,000 times more.
Totally.
And that's because you made a valuable thing that's worth a lot of money.
Yeah. I mean, the cool thing is about 20% of YC now is hard tech. Defense tech is up more than 2x in the last batch. Like, defense tech is interesting because it's sort of both. Like you want commercial validation. Like Icarus was one of the top companies from the last batch. And they literally they booked more than $1.5 million from the Department of War during the batch.
Oh, interesting.
So that's, that's why they were one of the top companies. Like they, during the batch, was able to go from here to here. And, I think that's the number one thing. Like objects in motion, stay in motion.
Yeah.
Objects at rest, stay at rest. And so, YC is sort of the moment that you need to like learn how to run fast. And this is something that we hear from like all the $1 billion companies even. They look back and say, oh, like if they feel like their, 1,000-person company is going slow, they try to tap that energy that they got when, the first 8 weeks of YC when they were running fast. Like, Airbnb famously talks about, they on Post-it notes in the bathroom put like a little graph of like every single week we need to grow our revenue on the site, manage marketplace 10% every week. And they nailed it. And that's why they raised from Sequoia at prior to demo day.
But didn't no one want to invest in Airbnb originally, right?
I mean, they got rejected from all the legends. So yeah, the funniest thing was, I think, Brian would always sort of obscure who the people were. But, now it's such a legend story. Like, I think I saw Mike Maples post like, oh yeah, that was me. And Mike has nothing to prove. He's like one of the biggest legends in all of venture. So it's just like part of lore now, I mean, and that's what gives me heartburn sometimes. Like, man, like, if we make a mistake and we say no to a founder who ends up like creating Airbnb, like, I'm sure we're going to do it. The reality is like, I'm sure we're going to do it and I'm going to feel bad about it. And I'm going to take that shame, and I take that feeling, and I'm going to turn it back into productive energy to make sure that YC fixes that. How did that happen? We're going to fix that. And then the next founder, we're going to fund them. We're going to get it right. And I mean, I guess that's what Brian Chesky taught me. Like, I need to exercise founder mode on this tree of prosperity. And then if we do that, then actually YC will fund like 30 to 50% of all the companies that matter.
Yeah.
And then if we're doing it, then we're actually even better equipped to help the next generation. Because like everything that we do, we kind of have to take our own advice. Like that's actually a common refrain we use all the time now. It's like, well, if we were a YC startup and we could do like option A or option B, like option A, spend a whole bunch of money and hire a bunch of people, or option B, like let's do it quick and dirty and see what happens and like take feedback and then, speed of iteration, like let's fix it next time. Like we got to do the startup way like 10 times out of 10.
Yeah.
Like I feel like that's my real job. It's like, no, we have to do it this way. We cannot, YC at 20 years by default, like almost always like post product market fit, like you fall into manager mode and it's like, nope, we're back to founder mode.
So I guess if we're continuing, this has just been like an hour and a half conversation about the acts of YC. Maybe we're at the end or the beginning of like act 3 or 4 or 5. I don't know where we're at, but like, what does the next act kind of look like for YC?
I think done right, like more and more companies, like we actually just straight up want more companies to succeed. And so, what does that look like? I'm going to experiment with rebatching. Like, I think that...
Rebatch, what does that mean?
Post Series A, like after you get your Series A, like we should give you another batch. Like I'm going to start with the companies that I funded. And then if that works well, like, I mean, we're just going to experiment. We're going to try things. And then if they work, we're going to double down and build software around it. And,
It reminds me of Standard Capital.
Oh,
like
yeah.
they do the
Dalton's awesome.
YC batch style for this first Series A, which no one has really done yet.
That's right.
And
Dalton and PB are insane. And, Paul Buchheit, like just super extreme legend investor.
Yeah. I have a portfolio company that I think it will have been announced by the time this podcast comes out, but they work with them. And it was like surprising. I was like, oh, that's cool. I didn't know you guys would be up for that. But like, it actually is a pretty interesting value proposition to the founders.
Amazing.
So yeah, I'm excited about that. And actually one thing also, I heard that, so YC has this internal software called Bookface.
Oh, yeah.
I heard that you actually made it.
Oh yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right.
What's the story with that?
Well, basically, YC started becoming a thing, and then people started pretending to be YC companies.
What?
And then there was no way to verify it. Like we had a Google group or something.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, okay, let me just, vibe coding wasn't a thing back then. I just actually real coded it in Rails. And initially it was actually just a Facebook. And this is a little bit of an inside joke from a skit from The Office.
From The Office? With the Jim.
Yeah,
the
Jim wearing
thing?
Bookface. Okay. Yeah. See, of a certain generation. See, I like you. We still have the 22-year-olds do not watch any of the stuff that we came up with. So I recently had a showing of The Matrix for all the 22-year-old founders.
Okay. I'm like barely on that. I need to go back and rewatch it. Yeah. Rewatch all of them. I feel like it comes up and I'm like, I watched them once when I was a kid, but I don't remember.
Totally. It's surprisingly relevant to startup founders.
The Matrix is.
Oh, definitely.
So a startup founder is like Neo?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, why not?
Interesting.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, he's stuck in this office and, sort of at the whim of like the man, right? Like, you have...
That's fair, yeah.
You're in this like cubicle and you have no control and no power. And then, he's a hacker though, right? And he goes to these cool raves and then, he meets these other secret hacker types that sort of understand the nature of the universe. I mean, that's how I felt when I was a software engineer and then went to become a founder. I was like, there's nothing that felt right about me working as a level 59 PM at Microsoft. And then I started to glimpse the Matrix when I worked at Palantir and, working for Peter Thiel and Joe Lonsdale and all my, I was fraternity brothers with Stephen Cohen and Joe Lonsdale. And I could see it, but I was still like in the Matrix, right?
And you're like on the cusp of getting out.
Yeah. And then finally, like YC was what helped me sort of take the red pill and make the leap. And it's like, oh no, I can be, not jacked into the Matrix. Like I can be like in the real. And that's what it feels like though. Like being a startup founder allows you to be directly present and in touch with like the market, like the users, the customers. Like customers can go anywhere. Like customers don't have to use your stuff. And so, being in the real allows you to create products and things that like actually get good outcomes. And so, I don't know, to take it full circle, like that's why like this billionaire tax, they call it the billionaire tax. I call it the asset seizure tax. Like Gavin Newsom himself, like is just running around saying like, guys, like we can't do this. Why are we doing this? There are 49 other states. So, people can just go. And that's what they're doing. Like Larry and Sergey have left more than $1 trillion of, people have left the state. And so,
and like once they leave, they go through all that hassle of like settling across the country. And then you're like, you know what? Florida's actually pretty nice.
Yeah.
Or Michigan or Montana or any of the other 49 states. Do I need to go back?
Yeah. So, I mean, if people are watching and they're startup founders, there would be startup founders and they're sort of in their, I too was working as a, sort of cog in the Microsoft machine when I was 22 years old. And there was something about like, go home and watch The Matrix.
Yeah.
And then realize like starting a company is taking the red pill and you might just turn out to be Neo.
One question I want to ask you, do you have like a personal AI stack? Like how are you using AI? You talked about using Claude a little bit. Just like, how do you use it today? Like what are you taking the most advantage of? Like if there was like Gary's top 3 hacks of using AI.
Oh
like
yeah.
What are you using
The
today?
number one thing, I sort of learned this from Jared Friedman and Pete Kumin, my partners at YC, but I call it meta prompting. So you can take almost anything that you might do all the time and you just drop it into a context window and then say, here's a bunch of inputs and outputs. Like, maybe you have like a bunch of notes. And then for me, for instance, I have YouTube outlines where it's like, Turner had a really funny tweet. Like I, would put that in the outline. And then, I might find 2 or 3 other things that like sort of flowed together. And then I would write YouTube script for me to like sort of, go on the teleprompter and like sort of recite so I could get it recorded. But you can take like a bunch of these inputs and outputs and then just drop it into a context window and tell it, write me a prompt that can act as an agent that does like, take this input and output over here. And you can even introspect. You'd be like, what are things you notice about, things that I did to convert this, from the input to the output. You do this for like almost any knowledge work. And then you can just start using it. And, initially it's going to suck because it's just not that smart yet. But, what's funny is like now I also use it to like iterate my writing. And so, for something like a YouTube script, like you really want it to sound like your voice. And so you can be like very direct about, well, I would never say that, or don't say it like this, or, like you used the long word when use the short word, man. Like you just like speak to it conversationally. And then you simultaneously you start with the prompt, then you have an output, but then you can use that new output. But right after you get that new output and you're happy with what happened, you'd be like, give me the next version of the prompt.
Like evolve my
based on what we talked about in this conversation, give me a better prompt that incorporates all the things we talked about. And you can do this with like literally everything.
Yeah.
And, in theory, like, honestly, like there's so much about what people do day to day. Like you could use it for tweets, like you use it for like editing podcasts, you use it for like pretty much everything. Like I just have a folder now of like prompts that, I use all the time. And I'm trying to iterate. Like my YouTube prompt one is like, I think on like V27 or something.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I have not used it a whole lot yet for content creation. I've done a lot of like just throw into ChatGPT and it has memory. Like it kind of gets context, but I haven't done like prompt evolution. I guess I need to master that.
Is great. I mean, the other thing that's great is sometimes when it's not quite working right, I'll use GPT 5.2 Pro. I'll use whatever the max thinking, like I'll even use Grok. And then I'll take, for whatever reason, Claude seems to be the best at like evaluating the outputs. I'll take all of the outputs from all of the different like max models. And then I'll put it into Claude and I'll ask, well, given, here's my prompt, here's the output from, 4 LLMs, including yourself. Rate each response and tell me what the pros and cons of each approach are. And then it'll spit it out. And then, you can sort of agree or disagree with like all, I usually like to say like, give it to me in numbered form. So I can say, I agree with 1, I disagree with 2, like 3 is this, but the nuance is blah.
Yeah.
And then after that, you can actually just say like, okay, well, given all of this, like synthesize.
Yeah. That's interesting. I like it a lot for rapid ideas. Like it's just like you get 100 ideas and one of them's good. Or whatever.
Yeah.
Like you can kind of give it feedback on like, I really liked this one, or because like it just comes up with stuff that maybe you would or wouldn't have came up with,
Totally.
but it just speeds up the process a little bit.
Yeah. And then I use Perplexity for anything that has to search the web. So, I think that like the, Claude and Gemini and these things are pretty good, but I still think my experience, like Perplexity still draws on and synthesizes way more sources. So I really like that on max mode.
I like that about Perplexity because one of my holdups, or one of the things I really like about Google is it shows you all these sources. You can kind of see where things come from. And if you just like the default kind of ChatGPT response, like you don't know where the stuff is coming from. And like maybe it's like the correctness or bias or whatever. But on Perplexity, it shows you all the sources and you can jump in. So I do like that. I still use Perplexity a little bit too. I like Perplexity I feel like it does the best when I say, I'm having Garry Tan on my podcast. What should I ask him?
Totally.
I kind of throw it in all of them, but I feel like Perplexity always gives me the best on average.
Yeah. It's incredible times we live in right now.
Yeah. Do you have one last question for you? Do you have a favorite CEO, founder, or business that you've gotten inspiration from over the years? Like who are you drawing from the most today? And maybe it's just Brian, because it sounds like he's had a pretty big influence.
I love Brian. Getting to work with him on the board is insane. And then actually watching Aaron Levy from Box has been really, really wild. Like, I only befriended him maybe like a year and a half ago. And he is very, very funny. You should ask him for magic tricks if you ever meet him.
I've had him on the podcast. Actually, I've never talked about magic.
Oh my God. Yeah. But I mean, I think there's something really special about Aaron in that like he's stuck with Box all of these years. And then the way he's thinking about how AI is going to change SaaS, I think is like I really look to him for just like, how's this all going to change and work? And he's like really, I love his tweets. So I've learned a lot from him.
Yeah. It's so fascinating where you would think all of these scaled incumbent software companies are so well positioned to just capture everything that's going to happen in AI. And maybe it's sort of happened in some cases, but there's also a lot of cases where like LLMs have been around for 3 years and the product hasn't changed at all, aside from the website saying that it has AI. Or like they throw on a chat box.
Oh my God. So, what's funny is like, I'm pretty sure you could just make a long short fund on whether or not the CEO is a hacker and has used Claude Code. And like, it would outperform the S&P.
Probably, yeah. Well, actually, right after this, I'm recording with Chaitin and Benchmark. I don't know if that's going to come out after or before this one. I have to figure out the schedule, but that's one of the things we're going to talk about.
Fantastic.
Is like this universe of all these software companies. I mean, the TAM is like $1 trillion in software spend, especially when you consider how it's going to change with AI. And it just seems like a lot of the big players have not done anything yet.
Yeah.
And will they win anything, or will it mostly be startups?
Yeah. I think people are underestimating to what degree like software is a very, very small part of like the majority of people's lives in the world. And the reason why is that, there are only 10 to 20 million people in the world who are actually good at code. And then we're about to enter this other moment where like actually, billions of people can actually just very directly create their own stuff. And then the hope is like, my hope would be actually a lot of things get better, faster, cheaper. Like we need more markets and we need more ability to enter, basically capitalism. Like we need actually not fewer markets, but more markets actually. And I think that that's what's going to happen. Like there's a tiny, tiny percentage of GDP is touched by software at all. And then the result is like all kinds of just loss. Just, this person was there and they could have, Uber or Airbnb or any of these marketplaces are good examples of there was not going to be a market. And then a market was created out of thin air. And then a lot more of it is done. And then what's the result? The result is like, I can get around. Like the nature of cities has changed really fundamentally.
Yeah.
You know, millions of people, perhaps maybe tens to hundreds of millions of people, like who maybe would have been hurt by drunk drivers. Like that doesn't have to happen anymore. And so
now sober drivers also.
That's right.
With Waymo.
That's right.
Like a car objectively, like I will not injure a human.
Yeah.
And I will just follow all the rules. And I'm not, I was scratching my nose or I got distracted for a second. It's just objectively like the software decides and knows, oh, this door opened and I sensed it within a split millimeter of a second and got out of the way.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, there's basically like extreme tech pessimism, but to me, it's like, I mean, tech is here to make things better. And then, I mean, granted, like I have a bias. Like, yes, I am surrounded by the top 1% of people who earnestly are trying to build technology in service of humanity.
Yeah.
And if that happens, like all of these things can happen. And so, I mean, even with AI, like there's sort of the dominant narrative is like somehow all the jobs are going to go away. But, I really like what Ryan Peterson from Flexport says. He says, look, like humans just want stuff, man. Like you're never going to get to the end of like the list of wants that people have in the world. And like technology, like in the hands of people who can harness it, and put it into the market, like that's the mechanism that actually literally improves the life and well-being of like every person. Like people today, like I think, middle-class people today live lives that like the kings and emperors of like 200 or even 100 years ago, or even like 80 years ago, like they couldn't even dream of having the life that we have like just day to day, our access to healthcare, our access to transportation, our access to education. Like, they couldn't even imagine that.
Like you can fly around the world.
Yeah.
Like you can literally you can go to bed and wake up on the other side of the planet.
Yeah.
Like that's insane.
And then, soon it'll be the moon and Mars.
Yeah.
So
actually probably like one of my most insane stats. Have you ever heard the one about firewood in the US?
What's that?
Firewood used to be like 25% of US GDP.
Oh
just
my
like
God.
The sale of firewood.
That's insane.
Which it's like, that's not even a line item anymore.
Yeah.
Like it's probably like a couple, maybe $50 million that we spend a year on firewood. That used to be the majority of the economy.
Yeah.
Was people buying and selling firewood.
I got to look that up.
Yeah.
I'll make a YouTube video and I'll credit you.
Okay. Yeah. No, it's super fascinating.
In it. We'll do a collab.
We'll do like a special. I'll try to find the tweet and I'll send it to you. But it's just
awesome.
Crazy. And it's just like shows. It's like this chart just kept going down and it's like 0.02%. I don't know, 50 years ago, whenever this chart was.
Go back a couple hundred years and it's subsistence farming, right? And instead we get to sit here, hang out as friends, just like talking about ideas. This is so cool.
Yeah, this is a lot of fun. Thanks for doing it.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for listening. And thanks to Numeral and Flex for supporting this episode. Put your sales tax on autopilot at numeral.com and upgrade to Flex Elite to get $1,000 on your first card using code Turner at the waitlist link in the description. If you enjoyed this conversation, please like, comment, subscribe, and share with a friend who should apply to YC. Make sure to check out the back catalog of over 100 episodes with the founders of companies like Robinhood, Mercury, and Box, and dozens of YC founders. Tune in over the next few weeks for guests that include Chetan Puttagunta at Benchmark, Jake Stauch at Serval, Mike and Nikhil at Footwork, and Scott Stevenson at Spellbook, the fastest growing AI company in Canada. If you don't want to miss any of these, subscribe to my newsletter, The Split, linked in the description, to get each episode plus a transcript emailed directly to your inbox every week. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.